If you haven't heard about Anchor, it's the easiest way to make a podcast. Let me explain. It's free. There's creation tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or computer.
Anchor will distribute your podcast for you so it can be heard on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and many more. You can make money from your podcast with no minimum listenership. It's everything you need in one place. Download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started.
For all new and current subscribers, welcome back to Resilient Love.
Resilient is being able to overcome difficult situations. This podcast is about love,
tips on life, and how to level up in your business. Let's get started on the journey.
Hey everyone, thanks for tuning in to another episode of Resilient Love. As you know, our January series is about small business, big mindset. And we have a special guest, another native of Kinston, and he's actually a graduate of University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. And he has a background in retail and sales. But look, I don't want to give away the whole bio because I want him to have his opportunity. So if we can have you come on, Mr. Efrem Yates.
Well, hey guys, thanks for having me on. I'm glad to kind of be a part of the series, and looking forward to chatting with you all.
Awesome. So I'm going to let my husband start off with the first question.
Okay. First question is, tell us about who you are and what you do.
So as you guys said, my name is Efrem Yates, and I am a Kinston native. So a little bit about me. I'm a graduate of the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill. Go Hills, even though that's not saying a lot right now in the way our basketball team is sucking up the place, but we'll get better about that. It's not looking too good for us this season. But UNC grad. I'm married. I'm a husband and a father. Been married for 7 years. My wife and I, we have a 5-year-old daughter who's going on 15, and she keeps us busy. But through all of that, we find time to run businesses and be parents and be husbands, and we're just trying to kind of make our mark in the world, so to speak. But looking forward to kind of chatting with you all.
Well, that's awesome. And so with that being said, what would you say, because again, our topic is about small business, big mindset. So what is your foundation or interest that led to the start of your business? And, we could talk about the photography first and then your new endeavor.
Okay. So I guess to sort of start with your question, my foundation or interest, if you would, that led to my start in business, you almost have to sort of go back to the beginning. Obviously, you guys can probably relate to this, but, I was raised in Kinston, North Carolina, small town with, just a little bit over 20,000 residents. And so, you coming up in an environment like that. My mom is a native of Kinston, born and raised, but I was born in the Northeast in Pennsylvania, but, once her and my dad's marriage split, we moved back to Kinston at a young age. So as you can imagine, coming from a 2-parent home to all of a sudden being raised by a single mom who had 3 small kids, that, changed things pretty quickly for us, right? So
yeah.
You couple that change with, moving from a 2-parent home to now you're living in the housing projects and you're in a violent neighborhood, and, you kind of grow up fast, right? Life is tough, it's I always say Kinston's just a little bit different, right? So,
right.
you know, I've had,
I know you can literally compare and contrast from Philly life to Kinston life. Wow.
So, you know, so with that, you know, you grow up and you have friends, you know, who are murdered. You have family members who, you know, are never getting out of prison, and that alone gives you a foundation and a drive and ambition to make something happen, right? You know, when you have younger siblings who you are responsible for, you know, for me, that was sort of the thing that first gave me sort of that drive, if you will, that I had to do something different, right? Because it just wasn't a lot of other options for me. You know, where we grow up, if you can't play basketball or you're not a football star, a lot of times, you know, people think there aren't a lot of options. But for me, I can remember as early as, you know, age 6 or 7, realizing that, you know, my family needed me. And so, you know, instinctively, I just sort of realized even then that I would be the one to sort of help them at some point in my life, right? And so, you know, being in that small town, you know, I set my sights on college very early, as I just saw it as a very practical way out, aside from just, you know, having the slim chance of being a superstar athlete, right? And so I was fortunate enough, that doesn't happen, right? You can't teach 6'8" and 250 pounds like LeBron, right? They just don't make those every day. And so I had to have, you know what I mean? And so I had to kind of find another way, and, you know, college really just seemed like a good option. So, you know, I worked, you know, really hard, got into a great school at UNC, and in many ways that was probably I like to say one of the best decisions I made, because it just truthfully opened my eyes to so many possibilities, right? When you come from a small town that, you know, Kinston's over 2/3 African American, you know, really small, close-knit community, and then you go to a college where it's a predominantly white institution, and it's a culture shock in many ways, right? And so in some regards, I, you know, felt out of place, right? Academically, I knew I'd find my way because I was a hard worker and I studied and that sort of thing. But socially, UNC was a challenge for me, right? I knew I'd feel out of place.
I can imagine.
I mean, I knew I'd feel out of place somewhat socially, right? Just changing, being around sort of, you know, African American people 99% of the time, to now I'm in this completely different space where people don't look like me, they're not from the same neighborhoods I'm from, and, you know, that I sort of expected, right? I expected that to be different, but I think what was really interesting about my UNC experience is I wasn't quite prepared for the black students to be that much different than me, right? So I'm coming from a place where, you know, like Quentin, you mentioned, we were talking that, you know, you worked in manufacturing, and, you know, in Kinston, that's what a lot of our parents did. If you didn't work at manufacturing, or you were a postal worker, or you worked on the police force. But when I got to UNC, all of a sudden I met these brown people who their parents were doctors and lawyers and engineers. And so for me, it was a shock to meet black people who came from affluent backgrounds. So I was not prepared for that. So that culture shock, right? And so, but what that did is it really sort of said, oh, wait a minute, like this is something that I can do. And so, you know, I'm this kid on campus coming from Kinston, and my mom couldn't even afford my UNC application fee, right? Like, she borrowed that money so I could apply to college. And, you know, I have roommates and friends who, you know, parents are, for all intents and purposes, you know, upper middle class and wealthy. And so, you know, it really gave me that foundation and helped me to sort of, you know, open up my perspective and understand what was possible. And, you know, from there I just sort of, you know, decided, had to really make a way,
Yeah, that's awesome. Like, just to understand that factor, because a lot of people, they don't discuss how even interacting with someone of the same culture or same race, there can still be some differences and perspective shifts that help you to grow and be better. So that was a good perspective for us too. I like that point. I haven't heard that point a lot with people, especially going to a predominantly white institution versus me. I went to an HBCU, so I continued that 99% of the time.
Yeah, it's different, it's the ones of those of us who did go at UNC, relative to the rest of the population, we all kind of knew each other for the most part, or knew of each other, right? And so, UNC in that regard was a good foundation, right? But I would say my life after UNC kind of gave me the real education that helped me in business and taught me how to hustle, right? So, after I kind of got my first job and, I moved away and I lived in Dallas for some time where, I moved to a place literally 1,000 miles away from home where I had no friends, no family. And I sort of put myself in this position where you kind of have to sink or swim. Like, you are your safety net, right? And so,
that's a good point. Yeah.
But I really, I told my mom and I told my family and, my wife, who, she wasn't my wife at the time, that, when I graduated school, I wasn't going to restrict myself geographically because I really, needed to kind of place myself in position where I could meet mentors and that I could have an opportunity to win. And so, living in Dallas was really great. I started a career in retail and, I just, like you said, learned how to hustle. I mean, I would referee. I would have a full-time job where I worked 40, 50 hours a week, but then I would referee basketball games on the weekend because I was able to get extra cash to save for my wife's engagement ring. Or, I read almost every book about stocks that I could get my hands on, and I met mentors who just really cared about me and were selfless and just poured into me because, they saw something in me that they wanted to share their knowledge and foresight with. And so, UNC kind of was the start. But, man, the time since I left college it doesn't even compare to what I've learned about myself and what I've learned about business and money. So,
yeah, that transition after college, a lot of people don't talk about that because they give you this American dream of get the degree and it's going to be this. And some people's storyline does go that way. And you begin to, as we already said, begin to grow into who you are. And like you say, develop more of an understanding of where you want to go in life. So that's really good. Mr. Dallas, did you actually go to a Cowboys game, or that wasn't a part of the agenda at that time?
No, I didn't go to I'm more of a basketball guy, so I did go to quite a few Mavs games, so that was kind of more my thing. I was more of a basketball junkie, which, coming from Kinston, you can understand that. Ball is kind of life where we're from, So,
right.
That was definitely very interesting. Our next question is that now that you are a Your Pie franchisee, how was your process to becoming an operator of a great company, and how did you decide that your pie would be the piece of the pie that George Jefferson was talking about?
That's funny. So, I'll be honest. Franchising is something that I've just always been interested in. I'll probably say for at least the past 5 or 6 years, I've sort of diligently been researching various franchise models. It's always been an attractive option to me because while I don't know a business out there where there isn't some risk of loss, right? That's the nature of sort of entrepreneurship. There's always that possibility that you're going to lose, or this venture could fail. But what I really like about franchises is that they provide a proven system that's been repeated many times over. And not only that, they give you a infrastructure and a built-in support system that can be the difference between you winning and losing, right? And so when you have a team of people who are familiar with the various aspects of how that specific business run and has been repeated, you offset many of those risks, even though ultimately it's still on you, whether it succeeds or fails, right? And so, with Your Pie, that was one of the things that just really intrigued me, is that I thought it was a simple concept, and, it fit into what I wanted to do in terms of being a franchise owner, because I just believe franchises are a really great way to sort of get into business, do it with some sort of safety net, and then you can sort of use that to grow your portfolio further, if you're successful. So.
Yeah, that's pretty good. I've thought about franchising, being a franchisee myself. So when I began to learn more about you and Your Pie, it was like, wow, a kid from Kingston, it's possible. So with that being said, at what point, during your time, your journey from Kingston to USC to Dallas and all the places in between, at what point did you say, I need to go bigger, I need to expand?
Well, I'll be honest, I never considered small, and this is going to sound, for me, I always knew that small wouldn't help me achieve the goals I have for myself and have for my family. So even with the franchise model, even when I was researching them over the last, say, 5 or 6 years, I've always sought opportunities that could allow me to own more than one location, because, again, part of what I believe fundamentally is that you have to earn enough money and be successful enough to take care of yourself. But if that's all that you earn, how can you possibly leave something behind for the people who are coming after you, right? And so for me, part of the reason why I wanted a system that would allow me to have a multi-store deal is because I believe in the long term, it's just better for myself and for my family. Now, of course, that means there are restless nights. Right now, I work 7 days a week, 80-hour plus work weeks. And, I've had to sacrifice time at home with my wife and my 5-year-old. But I never considered the alternative of small, because I know that I'm building something for my family that's ours, right? And no one else has a stake or claim to it. And for me, that's just a different type of grind and a different type of energy. And the stakes are much higher, but the rewards are far greater, right? And so for me, I need to expand and I need to grow, because the purpose and the reason that I feel I'm here is to do just that. Like, I have to do more than I could use in my lifetime, so that my nephews and my siblings and my parents can also benefit from some of the things that I'm doing. So small just isn't an option. Like, I have to win, and I work this hard.
Oh, that's good.
That's definitely good coming from where we come from.
Small is not an option. Like, you might as well put that as your hashtag for the rest of the year. Small is not an option.
I just don't. I don't know any other way. It's just, for as long as I can remember, that's just, it's just been my mantra that, one of the things that I talk about with my younger brothers a lot, right, is, in order to pursue this, like, our last name has to be more important than our first name, right? And so, and that's why like generational wealth and, wealth building and legacy is so important to me, because the only way we'll get ahead as a family, as a culture of Black people, is that we have to be selfless enough to do things that we may not necessarily reap all the benefits from, right? Like everything I'm doing now, my daughter is going to probably reap much more from this than I will, but it's worth it, right?
Yeah, most definitely. And I know she loves that pizza.
Oh, yeah. You know what I mean? Funny enough, funny you say that. She, like, no lie, she's kind of discovered this, and I'm not just saying this, but my wife took her to a local Your Pie, and she ate there once, and then about every week for several months, whenever I picked her up from daycare, we had to go to Your Pie. And it was like, all right, I pick her up from daycare, and where do you want to eat? And she called it Your Pie Pizza Place, right? So she always wanted to go to Your Pie Pizza Place. And so, that kind of just made me think, well, she's a picky 4-year-old. She really loves this place, right? And so that kind of made me take my dad hat off and start, putting my business hat on. And obviously from there you do the due diligence, and that was about a 10 to 12 month discovery process of just speaking to various franchisees and speaking to leadership and meeting them and, really kind of digging deep. But ultimately Your Pie just won out because I just felt really great product, and they had a team that seemed genuinely excited about having someone like me, who looks like me, who comes from where I come from, be a part of what they were building, Yeah.
Yeah, wow. Well, we gotta give baby girl some credit too. So good job, baby girl.
Yeah. Shout out to August, right?
Well, that's what's up, August. So we got one more question for you, Mr. Yates.
Last question is, what are 3 level up tips for anyone in business or your specific area of expertise?
All right. So I would say the first tip I would give anyone who wants to level up or is looking to sort of improve their life is, I would say, and you probably should lead with this one, is to find your why. And by saying that, I mean really hone in on your purpose, right? So, one of my favorite artists, Nipsey Hussle, said, right? He said in the lyric on his song, "Find your purpose or you waste an air," right? And so, not to take it that literally, but to me, once you kind of know why you're here and you sort of settle that within yourself, it really becomes a compass for you, and it gives you such a clarity, conviction, and confidence to your decision-making process, right? So whenever there's an opportunity presented to me, or, I've turned down really big paydays from corporations because it didn't align with why I was here, right? So, I was sharing with a friend not too long ago that, I turned down a job offer that would have been a really big payday for me while I was in the process of transitioning to Your Pie, because it just didn't align with who I saw myself as a father and a husband. I would have had to basically reverse commute and live in one city during the week and only see my daughter during the weekend, and that just wasn't how I wanted to see my life, right? Because for me, family is one, I call it my top 3, but there's family, there's wealth, and then, there's, my purpose, and all of those are connected. And so if one of those are out of balance, it doesn't work for me, right? And so I turned that opportunity down to take what seemed a lesser opportunity, because the lesser opportunity was consistent with why I believe I'm here and the mark I believe that I'm meant to make, right? And so I think if, you really hone in on that to start, it will allow you to level up because you'll learn that you have to say no to a lot of things to say yes to the things that are really important, right? So the why helps you do that, and your why helps you focus on that.
Wow, that's good. I got to get my top 3 together.
It just, you can't, right? There's not enough time. We don't have enough time on this earth to do everything, right? So at some point, we do have to choose, and we just have to make a choice of where we're going to stake our claim, right? And that takes some soul searching. That takes you being able to say, what am I okay not achieving? Because if I don't achieve this, I'll really get the thing that I want to get, right? And so if I had to give, a follow-up piece of advice to that, I would say, and this probably isn't going to be the most sexy advice, but I promise you it is probably the thing that changed my life the most financially, and it's save your money, right? Now,
yeah.
I know that, there are people who, are listening to this. Maybe, they're a single mom or, they're already working 2 jobs just to sort of get by, and they're looking at the bills and they're looking at what's coming in and they're doing the math and saying, how am I possibly going to save, right? Like Houseway, I barely got enough money to pay what I'm paying now. You're telling me to save, right? But but what I'm saying here is that learning to save isn't about having a specific amount or building a super large bank account, at least initially, right? It's not about, I don't want this to sound elitist, for lack of a better word, or this isn't some like soapbox moment to tell people what to do with their money, right? This is more of saying that saving is about challenging your relationship with your money, and it's really ultimately about changing our mindset towards money, right? So I just personally believe that a person's relationship with money can tell you a lot about whether they have what it takes to be successful in business or other areas of their life, right? Because for me, I believe that saving or learning to save reaps a far greater return to us than the actual money that we get from it, right? So the same muscles that we develop in building a habit of saving are the same muscles that we'll ultimately use to propel us towards our goal, right? So if I could paint a clear picture, to save money or to reach a goal of saving, you have to sacrifice. That means you have to maybe not spend your money on the thing you want because your goal is more important. You have to learn discipline, and you have to develop that willpower to, again, reject what you want now for the thing that you really want, right? And so those qualities won't just help you level up in business, so to speak, but if you can learn how to sacrifice and be disciplined and reject things that do not contribute to the goal you actually want to get to, you'll not only level up in business, but you'll level up in any area of your life that you want to, because again, you've developed those muscles to do it, right? And I think like money is so important to so many of us that if you can get control over your money to where you're telling your money what to do and your money isn't telling you what to do, then that means that you've developed discipline to be able to duplicate that in other areas, if that makes sense.
Yes, it does.
That was deep.
Sorry, man. I get a little bit. But I had a really good mentor who kind of told me this, over 10 years ago, right? And he said something to me, and when he said it to me, I kind of was like, that's it, because it wasn't like this kind of 3-step program to be rich or this something that kind of sounded really good or was a good quotable, if you will. But like when he elaborated he kind of told me, and he's done very well for himself, but he said, Efrem, saving by itself doesn't make you rich. It's the opportunities that you can access as a result of having saved that might get you there, right? And that's true no matter what level you're on currently. So if you learn how to save, what ultimately may happen in your life is someone will come to you with an opportunity like a franchise, or someone will come to you with a business or a stock idea that you can invest in. And because you've saved, now you can take advantage of it, right? And so that's why saving ultimately may get you there, right? But if you haven't developed that discipline, now when the opportunity comes, you can't take advantage of it because you don't have anything in the storehouse to use, right? So you miss that.
Mhm. So, did you have any other remarks or any updates for the listeners today?
I'd say honestly, just kind of last quick piece of advice. Since you kind of asked me for 3, I gave you, finding your why, saving your money. And then the last thing I'll say is just when it all comes down to it, the advice goes out the window, and really it's just about hard work. And I mean really hard work, harder than you've ever worked before, right? And I mean this in the most sincere and transparent way that I can say it, but at some point you just have to be able to go within yourself and find that other gear. Like there just comes a point when whatever idea that you have, whatever dream it is that is on the inside of your head and beating in your heart, you have to find a way to push that out, right? And the only way that dream is going to come out is if you work at it and if you do it, because there comes a point where your support system can't help you do it. Your therapist doesn't have another piece of advice that's going to get you through. It's going to be you working on that thing and making it come to life, right? There just comes a point where, it's just going to have to come out and you're going to be the one to get it there. And I believe that's where a lot of the dreams sort of fall short that we have in our minds and in our hearts is we have a good plan and we are not short on ideas, but it tests the most strong-willed person to have to work, 60 days in a row before you get a day off, right? Like that sounds kind of nuts, right?
Yeah.
But but like I can tell you, starting this franchise between November 1st and January 1st, I took 2 days off, and that was Thanksgiving Day and Christmas Day, right? And so I'm not saying that just to say as some badge of honor, but what I'm saying is that sometimes it takes that, because if you're saying I'm in control of my success and I own whether I make it or not, you can't depend on someone else to get you across the finish line. It's the mentality of even if they stop, I'm going to keep going because it's just that important to me. So, one thing that Diddy says that, a lot of people, feel how you may feel about him, but, one of the quotes I saw him post recently said that your new life will cost you your old one, right? And often we hear a quote like that, and we say, we envision all the negative things that we're going to let fall by the wayside, right? We hear, 2020, I'm going to do this, no more this. And that's all the stuff that's bringing us pain and heartache anyway that we want to get rid of. But what we don't consider is that we may actually have to, pare back some of the things that are really dear to us and that we love, right? It may cost us some of those things too, right? And so that's when it becomes difficult, right? And that's when you have to look at yourself in the mirror and say, am I built for this, right? When I can say, you know what, I'm working 80 hours a week now because I don't want to have to make this decision when my daughter's older and when right? So I'm going to make
Yep.
this decision now so that I can have the free time later to give her all the attention she needs, and then also the resources to be able to create opportunities for her that I didn't have growing up. And so that's it for me. Just, work really hard. It won't be easy, but it'll be worth it. And, that's it.
Wow. I am just so glad we were able to talk. You have really empowered us. And I hope our listeners have been empowered today to know that small is not an option. So we really, really, really appreciate you, Mr. Efrem Yates. And where can we follow you? I know we can follow you on your Pie like page on Facebook, which I liked it, and I like your pie. But where can the viewers follow you or listeners follow you on social media?
I have an Instagram page that Yates84. I have a Facebook page as well. I will say I need to do better about being a little more active on social media, but definitely on Instagram and Facebook, and then obviously, of course, our Your Pie page. And I really love for you guys to come, if you're ever in the Triangle area, come check us out. Pretty good pizza, and I think you'll enjoy it.
It's on our list already.
Yep.
I appreciate that.
Well, again, thank you so much for your time, and we appreciate everything that you have given us, and we'll chat with you all next time. This has been another episode of Resilient Love. Thank you.
Thanks so much for listening to Resilient Love Podcast. We wanted to take this opportunity to also let you know that you can help us by committing to a monthly fee of 99 cents, $2.99, or $9.99. Those contributions help us to keep this movement of resilient love going. Blessings to all listeners and subscribers. Thank you all.
Resilient Love.